Secretary of Treasury.
Secretary of Treasury.
Deals with money.
Deals with money.
Secretary.
Hi, and welcome back to Mr. Raymond's Civics and U.S. Government Academy, where today we will look at the principles of the American constitutional government. These principles, which provide the bedrock for our federal government, go hand in hand with the previous video we did called Principles of the U.S. Constitution. So afterward, you might want to check that out. And your benchmark explains that you're going to have to demonstrate your understanding of these foundational principles: consent to the governed, limited government, rule of law, democracy, and representative democracy. And just a reminder, teachers, that this PowerPoint with lesson plans, activities, worksheets, and more are available at Teachers Pay Teachers. Just click the link below in the notes section or search for Mr. Raymond's Civics Academy. So the state wants you to understand that these principles define and shape the American constitutional government. I like to think of these principles as the foundation that our federal government is built upon. The first and probably most important is the principle of democracy. Democracy is a word that dates back to ancient Athens, Greece, which literally translates to people power or rule by the people. This is the basic understanding that it's the people who are responsible for making decisions in our society, not some king or ruling family like the medieval days. Now, in a democratic society, the people make decisions by voting. Although most people would tell you that America has a democratic government, technically we have what is known as a republic, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Regardless of how the government is set up, democracy is the idea that the people rule. And this is the foundation of our principles and our government. Taking this idea that the people are in charge a step further is the principle of consent of the governed. And this principle, dating back to the days when we were still part of Great Britain, means that the people are the source of any and all governmental power. Remember, a source is where something comes from. The idea of consent of the governed was written into the Declaration of Independence, the document creating the United States of America, when Thomas Jefferson wrote that, quote, "Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed," unquote. This principle can also be found in George Mason's words in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, when he states that the people cannot be taxed without their own consent. Remember, the governed are the people. And to give your consent is to say that you agree or give your permission. So consent to the governed means the people allow the government to rule us. We give our consent to the government in a variety of ways, from when we obey the law to when we vote for them to continue to run our government. Consent to the governed clarifies that it's the people who have the power, not the government. Now, as I was saying before, America is technically a republic, and a republic is a representative democracy. And this is our next principle. A representative democracy means that the people elect public office holders to make laws and run the government on the people's behalf. The ancient Athenians who created democracy had what is referred to as a direct democracy, in which all of the citizens would get together to vote on all of the laws and issues. In America, we're way too big and way too busy to vote on all of the issues, so we elect people to do that for us. Those elected officials are known as our representatives, and they're supposed to look out for our best interests, aka represent us. The principle of representative democracy explains that even though the people have the power, we give some of that power to our elected officials. Now, how do we know that we can trust these elected representatives? Well, this leads to our next principle, the rule of law. The rule of law means that we are a society of rules or laws that guide the way we interact and treat each other. And that includes the people we elect to run our government. The rule of law means that the government and those who governed are bound by the laws, as are those who are governed, us. There's an expression that goes along with the rule of law, and that is that nobody is above the law. The rule of law is what gives us protection from the government and from ourselves. This allows us to give power to elected officials, knowing that they can't take away our rights or abuse their power. And if they do, they will face the same consequences that we do. President Richard Nixon found this out the hard way when he broke the law, as have other government officials when they have used their office to steal money or commit other illegal or unconstitutional acts. Remember, the rule of law means that everyone must obey the law, including the government. Now, what all these principles have in common falls under our last one, which is limited government. This is the idea that the government is not all powerful and may only do those things that the people have given it the power to do. We put a lot of faith in our elected officials. We give them the power to use large sums of money paid by us in the form of taxes. We let them control a military made up of our own citizens. We allow them to make decisions that are going to impact all of our lives. And for that reason, we want to make sure that we put some limits on the power that we give them. Limited government means that we have a system which ensures that nobody in the government has too much power, because power is something that can be abused. This was especially clear to the framers of the U.S. Constitution, our rule book for the federal government, who had lived in a time when many nations were ruled by kings or queens who often abused their powers. And that is why these principles are so important. Today, there are countries around the world ruled by leaders who abuse the rights and privileges of the people they rule. These principles that the Founding Fathers put into place in the Constitution ensured that America would have a government that was, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, of the people, by the people, and for the people. So let's review. Which principle means that the people are the ones who rule? Now, technically, you could almost answer all of them for this definition, which speaks to how all of these are related. But this is the definition that the state gave us for democracy. Which principle means that no one is above the law, not even the government? Just ask Richard Nixon. Rule of law. Which principle means that the people elect officials to run the government and pass laws for them? That is representative democracy. Which principle means that the people give their permission, or consent, to rule them? Consent of the governed. Which principle means that the government is not, quote, all-powerful, unquote? Limited government. And that is it. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe. Up next, we're going to be looking at some documents dating back to the beginning of U.S. history. And just a reminder, teachers, that this PowerPoint with lesson plans, worksheets, activities, etc. are available at Teachers Pay Teachers. Just search for Mr. Raymond Civics Academy or click the link down below in the notes. And again, thanks for watching.